All right. I hereby call the 2,276th meeting of the Milwaukie City Council to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Shh. Just a second. I'm trapped.
Wait, you're gonna
Wardrobe
Don't tear your
malfunction.
coat. Wardrobe malfunction.
All right. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's weird.
Yeah, that was. It's something heavier got down in here and it compressed.
Okay. Is Mark's not coming. Jeez, that's... So, the first item is the Milwaukie High School Outstanding Student Achievement Award for September of 2018, presented to Ashley Marie George. So Milwaukie High School Principal Carmen Gelman will be presenting. Come on up.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. I am very honored to be here today presenting this young lady, Ashley George. I met Ashley last year when I was a transitional principal, and she came into my office with a couple of other students and wanted to advocate to get art placed on our modulars, because this year, as many of you know, our school was torn down and we've moved into modulars. And so Ashley and her friends had already conducted a survey, and they wanted to advocate for student voice, and that this art was really important because we were going into this transition. And I stopped her and I said, well, I'm all about student voice. I'm super excited. And so then she put together a plan and presented it to the construction folks. And I thought in that moment how exciting it was to know that this young lady was a junior and that I was going to get a full year with her. So when I got the email about nominating someone, she was the first person that came to my mind. Just some accomplishments about Ashley. She currently holds first place academically in her class, along with taking many rigorous courses like AP Lit, AP US Government, and Pre-Calc. She's an editor-in-chief for the Maroon Yearbook, senior class president, a member of the National Honor Society, and Habitat for Humanity. On campus, Ashley's a natural leader and participates on the equity team, which is a school-wide team that includes teachers and students, and is a Mustang Pulse blog editor, as well as rallying for her fellow students to get engaged and involved at school, in their community, and in politics. Ashley is very strong. She knows what she wants. She is a young lady that can set clear boundaries and advocate for what she believes in. But I think what impresses me the most about Ashley is that she is probably one of the kindest people I know and that I've met in the school so far. And so I am very honored to have you as a student and grateful to be here with you tonight.
Thank you.
Sweet.
You were so sweet. Oh my gosh. My heart. Thank you so much. And I just kind of wanted to show her off a little bit too. I don't know, I only met her the end of last year, and right away when we were presenting to her, she's just like, oh, you think you need to try to convince me to get on board with Student Voice? You're so cute. Like, she was on board already. It was kind of just like, where can we get to convince other people to get on board with it, basically, which was awesome, and I'm so excited too about this year.
So, I'm sorry.
So, often what we do is we have the student talk to us about their plans for the future, and then the council sort of has some words.
Cool.
Okay. As far as college goes, I'm currently looking into Northern Arizona University. I think that it's a gorgeous campus. I'm still kind of looking into a lot of their programs right now. I'm torn between a lot of things, honestly, right now, as a lot of high schoolers are. I've looked into nursing and travel nursing as a possible career, but I'm also really interested in physiology. So I thought that bioethics would kind of be a really cool in-between, which is usually through some sort of graduate program. So NAU, I could probably minor in some kind of biology or major in philosophy and law, and then I could work my way up to bioethics, but we'll see. I might change my mind in like a week. Who knows?
All right. Who wants to start? Okay.
Well, based on your resume, I feel like whatever it is you decide that you're going to do in college, you are going to succeed, because it's pretty amazing. Considering class president and rank #1, it's just, we get to see a lot of wonderful Milwaukie High students, but this is an outstanding resume. I had a question for you regarding, you're on the student advisory committee for the principal. What is that? Or is that the way it was? Is that
she's been nominated to be, so we have our first meeting this month, and it's a student advisory committee that advises me.
Okay.
And so there are 75 students that were recommended and 35 that were chosen. And so she's one of them. And
I didn't even know about that.
Did I just let
Congratulations.
You're on so many committees you can't remember.
You made the cut.
But basically, the idea is that we, the students, it's a very diverse group of kids that truly represent the face of Milwaukie High School and Milwaukie Academy of the Arts. And the goal is that whenever we are trying to make decisions that impact students, which is a lot, we want to run things by them to get their advice and their feedback around if they think that would work. And so
She's awesome.
it's a very diverse group of kids. So our first meeting is this week, but she was nominated by several teachers.
Wow. Well, I'm glad to give you the good news.
I appreciate it.
See how helpful you were tonight. Well, I certainly agree with what Counselor Abma had to say about, wherever you decide to do in the future, I think you'll be very successful at it. And how interesting that you have such a wealth of choice that you've already thought about, and it just kind of goes along, it seems to me it goes along with what you've been doing in your high school years so far, with all of the different kinds of things in so many different, arenas, disciplines, whatever. It's amazing. We've, over the years, seen many awesome high school students, and it just continues to please us and in some ways amaze us that these wonderful young people keep coming through and we get to keep meeting them. So thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So I was curious to know a little bit more about the art project. What it is you're proposing happens to the pods. Is it student art, or is it
we're still kind of in the process. What Tessa Ryder, she graduated last year, she's one of the students that did the survey, and what we kind of had in mind is that it would be student art, and we created it's still kind of a mock application, but we call it like the mod art installation application. So that was, our goal was to give that out to the community of our school, so that way if an individual student just said, I want to have an art piece hung up in the school, then they could do that. They could sign up and say, I'm just an individual, I have an idea for this art piece, or even if they weren't an artist, we had a section for, I'm not artistic, but I have someone in mind, or I'll need to reach out to an artist, or a club could fill it out for their club, because as we're losing our school, we're losing our hallways as well, which, like their hallways, you don't really think about that too much, but that's where we would promote a lot of things, and I loved our hallways. Like, we had so much color up there, and we would spend so much time just decorating, and that's actually where we even hung up a lot of the blog posters that we made for the equity team. So I think that the goal was that it's just to make it feel like a home again, I guess. And so even teachers too, like we have some really, really amazing decorative teachers, and many of them have been in that school for years, and they were losing a lot as well. So we thought that it would be really cool if we could splash a little bit of color on the walls, because it is kind of, it's like, I don't know, it's an interesting environment right now. It's kind of blinding.
Yeah.
So I'm really, really excited to see it grow and then just watch it turn into something that we created, because it's our home for 2 years, and something that Carmen actually told me was that the architects that were, and the contractors that are building the school and that put the mods in there, they were like, can we get an installation too? So
nice.
We're actually going to have a painting day, I believe, on the 29th, which is 2 Saturdays from now. And I think that one of the art teachers is reaching out to his students, and some teachers might show up, and it's just kind of going to be like a free-for-all if you have one, and then we're going to kind of plot it throughout the building.
Nice.
Cool.
Sounds awesome. Sounds great. Sounds great. And
So
kudos
excited.
to you. I mean, in addition to just being impressive, all the things you do, you're also obviously very, you have a wide range of interests, from the art to the math to the literature to the nursing. And I guess that's always nice to see. And I would totally encourage you not to feel like you need a major when you go to college. I didn't declare a major till my junior year. I dabbled in this and that and tried to find out what was right for me, and definitely don't feel the need to pin yourself down before you go. You know, keep your horizons open, and you seem like you'll, like Counselor Abma said, you'll flourish whatever you decide to do. So
Thank you.
congratulations.
If I were to pick a major, I'd probably change it. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, way to keep an open mind. And interesting is a very diplomatic way to describe the current situation you all find yourselves in.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about, I imagine that's part of the success that led you to be student class president. That's pretty cool, a pretty cool achievement. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that probably did, I think just advocacy for that probably did help get me on the map a little bit. But, sorry, are you asking more about like the environment of the school and like the situation right now?
Just
or?
senior class president. That's a wonderful achievement. And can you tell us a little bit about sort of what inspired you to run for that role, and
Okay.
what do you hope to achieve this year other than the art project?
Oh, awesome. Okay, thank you. I think actually what really got me interested in student government was the equity task force that she told you about, and just the equity blog as well. I think that, well, we started having these equity lessons. I'm saying equity a lot, but I don't know if City Council knows too much about what's been happening in our school, but basically we have been addressing like just whole classes, and the entire school last year we started addressing these issues that aren't really talked about in school. And I thought that it was amazing. It's like we're finally talking about what's happening all around us and what is kind of seen as like, oh, too uncomfortable or too taboo to talk about. And I think that just seeing student leaders step up and put themselves in vulnerable positions and talk about things that might make them feel uncomfortable or vulnerable to being targeted by some not nice people, I thought that was just really, really brave. And I thought about like student government and student leadership as well, and I thought, what if we can kind of redirect the role of it so it's not just homecoming week, you know, which is a lot of fun and a really big part of high school, but I feel like there could be so much more done by our students because it's by the students and for the students. And I think that I want to see more leadership from the students and creating the environment that we want.
Well, I think young people are going to save us from ourselves. So thank you very much for stepping up in that way, and also for making yourself uncomfortable, for encouraging, you know, your fellow students to have those conversations, because I do think it's very important. And I think that many of us choose not to have those conversations because they're difficult. So thank you very much for the work that you're doing there, and all of your fellow students. And thank you also to the adults in the room who are here to support you. I always like to give a little shout out, because I'm sure that you have a lot of people who support you and love you and are so proud of you. So thank you to all of you.
Thank you. My dad's pretty cool.
High praise indeed. Well, yeah, it's extraordinary, the students that Milwaukie High School seems to produce, and you are a shining example of what we get to see every month. A couple of us were so inspired by seeing your sort of resume before this evening that there was a conversation with the chair of the art committee that perhaps we should start having a student member of the art committee. And so I hope we can continue that conversation on the broader picture and start to look at how that would work. But somebody who's, you know, has the chutzpah to conceive of and then follow through on doing something as big as beautifying those pods, which is going to be no mean feat. That's the kind of people that city art committees are always dying for. So it's, you know, I think, as Angel said, it's the young people that are going to save us from ourselves, and I, for one, would like to start seeing the young people engaged in things that happen in the city more than we currently have. So that would be an interesting start to it. You and I share a couple of things. I was also in student government and also the editor of the yearbook. Oh, no way. So your future is bad. It's the mayor of a small town.
To do everything.
In any case, it's a pleasure to meet you, and super proud to be able to give you this. The City of Milwaukie is proud to recognize for outstanding student achievement in academics, civic engagement, and extracurricular activities at Milwaukie High School, Ashley Marie George. Let it be known to all on this 18th day of September 2018, the City Council of the City of Milwaukie, a municipal corporation in the County of Clackamas in the state of Oregon, recognize this student as an excellent example of the bright future of this community and nation.
Thank you.
That's fine.
Isn't this Principal Gilman's first time?
It is.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So,
Recognize that. Yeah.
a couple things before the principal leaves the room. This is your first time before us, and there will be many more. And welcome, for starters. And it's great to hear from the best source possible that you're a wonderful principal already. We always have curiosity about the ongoing project. So each month, if you can give us 2 minutes of here's where it's at, here's what's happening, here's when we expect this to happen. As far as the construction and all that, you can, sure. Since you had no forewarning, I wouldn't require it today, but if you want to do it.
Well, obviously we moved into the modulars, and that's been quite an interesting situation. The modulars, from the feedback that we're getting from students and teachers, are that the insides are really nice. They're air conditioned, they're heated, so they're nicer than their rooms were in the building. However, the outside, it's very plain and everything looks the same. And then the hallways, I would say the floors are metal, so they're very shiny, and you need sunglasses when it's sunny because they will give you a headache. But I think overall our teachers have done an amazing job of showing up and making sure that our students are getting what they need, and I think it's a really good feeling in the school right now with students, and I'm getting a lot of good feedback from parents and students about their experience this year, so I'm very excited. We had our first PEP assembly, and it was a lot of fun. The kids did a great job, and I heard a lot of people say it's the best one that they've had in quite a few, like, they just really enjoyed it, and we had a lot of fun. So the modulars are a work in progress, so every day we discover something new that we need to think about, like gutters. Right?
Oh, yeah.
So they're putting on short gutters in the next week or two. So it's just a work in progress. We have the contractors on site, and every week there's a meeting that I attend. And then we also have a liaison that the district has appointed to work on all the projects so that I'm not having to do all of that as the principal. It's been a huge transition at Milwaukie High School this year. 25 new staff members, almost a brand new admin team, moving into the modular. So it's been a pretty heavy lift, but it's super exciting. Anytime you're around young people, it just re-energizes you. And so it makes you really excited about the future. So at this point, I think we're good. And we're just going to keep moving forward.
That's great.
So are they going to allow you to modify the exterior of the buildings in this art project?
Yes. So
That's
they will
cool.
be on panels, big panels, and then they will be able to drill 6, screws into the modulars, and that's the only thing we're going to be able to do because we're not allowed to do that inside the modulars. We're not allowed to put any holes in the walls or anything like that. The modulars were built specifically for us, but then when we're done, they're going to take them and resell them. And so it's important that we try to keep them in the best shape as possible. So, but yes. And there's, I think, 26 panels already that they're planning on putting art on, and so lots of teachers they're already thinking of like what they want to do for their, near their modular. So
Cool.
I think it'll look really cool once the art's up, and it's going to be very different than any other school.
Yeah.
Wow, and what happens to those panels when the new? There will be a whole new campaign to save the panels.
Yeah, save the panels. Yes, we have some amazing artists in our school.
Yeah.
So they're phenomenal.
Cool.
We'll have to have a tour of the art.
Yeah,
once it all
we will.
gets-
Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be really great.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. Thank you very much, and welcome.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Okay, next up we have the Home Inventory Disaster Preparedness Week Proclamation. This is going to be introduced by our own city recorder, Scott Stauffer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. To my knowledge, this was put forward by our interim finance director, Bonnie Dennis, who could not be here tonight because it is her anniversary, and so we thought that was a better use of her time this evening. But she left me some speaking notes on the Home Inventory Preparedness Week Proclamation, so I shall read them forthwith. With National Preparedness Month, which September is, it is a good reminder that you need to be prepared for an event in terms of safety, but also making sure you have records of your personal belongings by inventorying your home. The first step is in saving you time and stress following a disaster is to prepare an inventory of your personal property. This will help you when you are filing insurance claims. Think about things such as home inventories can be as simple as taking a picture of each room in your home and writing a brief description of them, of each thing in each room. If you can, note the make, model, price, and any other details that might help when filing a claim. A second step is to review your insurance coverage and discuss your policy with your insurance agent. For more information on how to create an inventory system, you can visit the website for the State of Oregon Division of Financial Regulation, www.dfr.oregon.gov/prepare now. Also, the federal government, of course, has a number of resources online at ready.gov. And so, with that, Mr. Mayor, staff would appreciate you reading the proclamation.
All right. Whereas each September is recognized as National Preparedness Month, and whereas Oregonians have witnessed and experienced natural disasters in our own community, and whereas every community member can take active steps to protect their families and neighbors from natural and man-made disasters, and whereas every family and business in Milwaukie is encouraged to take active steps to be financially secure after a disaster, and whereas every community member is encouraged to make sure that they are properly insured against fire, flood, earthquakes, and storms, and whereas every community member is encouraged to create a home inventory to include as part of their disaster preparedness kit. Now, therefore, I, Mark Gamba, Mayor of the City of Milwaukie, a municipal corporation in the County of Clackamas and State of Oregon, to hereby proclaim the week of September 16th through 22nd, 2018 to be Home Inventory Week, and I encourage all Milwaukeeans to join cities across Oregon in building a home inventory of their personal property and ensuring that they are financially prepared for disaster.
So I'd like to add just a pitch for emergency preparedness more broadly. I mean, I think that's a great, important step, but having an emergency preparedness kit at your home for your family is really important. And there's the ready.gov website that was mentioned is certainly one. There's also State of Oregon emergency preparedness website. There's a campaign called 2 Weeks Ready, and the idea is you should have 2 weeks worth of your medications, your pet's food, and most importantly, water. And they say 1 gallon of water per day per household member. So in a family of 5, that's a lot of water, 2 weeks worth of water to store. Anyway, I just would encourage people to look to those kind of resources about how to prepare your family and your household. As we all know, we live in an earthquake-prone region, and it's important to be prepared. And this is Emergency Preparedness Month, so I have to work on it myself, but I just would like to use the pulpit of being on City Council to make that pitch to people. So thank you.
All right. Another trick I was once told about the whole inventory is to just walk around your house with a video camera.
Right.
Just video in the closet, each room. That will help you after a disaster, listing all your stuff.
And it's important to update that every once in a while, too. Yeah. Don't let it go 10 years and go, oh, yeah, you could do that again. Yeah.
All right, we had one item that we removed from the agenda. That was the Clackamas County Library District Intergovernmental Agreement Amendment, and we will be seeing that at the next regular session in 2 weeks. So on tonight's consent agenda, we have the council meeting minutes of the August 14th, 2018 study session, the August 14th, 2018 special session, and the August 21st, 2018 work session. We have a resolution authorizing a contract with Jones Lang LaSalle Americans, Inc., to serve as the owner's representative for the final design and construction of the Milwaukie Leading Library. We have a resolution approving the city's participation in the Managing Oregon Resources Efficiently Intergovernmental Agreement with Marion County. We have a resolution authorizing a legal services agreement with Jordan Ramus, with a revised effective date of August 16th, 2018. We have a resolution terminating multiple unused sewer easements on the Moda Plaza property at 10505 Southeast 17th Avenue, but at staff's request, that last one will be removed from the consent agenda for separate consideration. So does any member of council wish to remove any other items from the consent agenda?
No.
Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda minus item E.
So moved.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda minus item E. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None heard. It passes unanimously. So, item E, separate consideration of the resolution terminating sewer easements on the Moda Plaza property. Chuck, you want to come up and walk us through this?
So, good evening, Mr. Mayor, councilors. We've had a lot of communication on this item from the Moda attorneys and from our own attorneys with several changes. So that's one of the reasons why we've asked for this to be taken off the consent. So I believe everybody has a copy of the revised resolution and attachments. To summarize what has been done, we've revised the first whereas, we've replaced the second and third whereases, and I will read all of these eventually. We've revised the fifth whereas, we've revised the therefore. The primary thing is that we are still working through some of the actual legal descriptions related to these easements on the meets and bounds measures to make sure that it covers both our interests in the future for the sewer lines that are remaining on the property, and for the easements that are disappearing from the property for the quitclaim. The Exhibit 1 that was originally in your packet has been removed from one of the attachments. That was Moda's Alta survey. They had done for their benefit, not necessarily for the city's benefit. So it was just to show what they had on the property. It is a lot of easements on that piece of property, and they're pretty messy as far as crisscrossing all over, as you could see in that Alta survey. But that's what it is. From our viewpoint, the only thing we really have to nail down is the location of our siphon that goes across the property and underneath Johnson Creek. As you know, that's a directional bore, so it's not quite as easy to locate. And we want to make sure that the new easement they're proposing, which is the attachment in here, covers all of that particular pipe. So that's why the changes that were made, I will read the new resolution barring any questions moving forward.
Well, I had asked a question via email earlier. Whenever the concept of abandoning easements comes up, I wonder if we're missing an opportunity, and the one that comes to mind currently is around the future potential of fiber optic system throughout the city, and the process of then going back to property owners all over the city and asking for easements when we had easements that we gave away. So I had asked if that was something we should be thinking about in this process, and got an answer, but I thought I should let Chuck give it more broadly.
Yeah, that is something that we could do. We could broaden the language of the easement so it isn't exclusive towards sanitary. It could be used for any utilities, water, storm, et cetera, through there. We could definitely approach Moda with that request. It is kind of an unusual site because it crosses Johnson Creek 3 times, that easement does, so it's a little bit challenging from that particular viewpoint. But one of the advantages we do have in this particular case is ODOT actually owns everything immediately to the east of this property. They own quite a big swath through there. But that is something that we could definitely approach with them.
So you're concerned about giving up the easement because we could connect to these houses that are further down Riverway?
If we could use a sewer easement for fiber, but I think part of the answer I got also came from Justin, that it's very specific right now, right? That it's just for sewer. So
correct. Using the easement for any other purpose besides maintenance and construction and repair of the existing, or what was at one time granted for a sanitary sewer system, would be an additional burden on the property. It wouldn't be allowed under the existing easements. So we would have to go back to the property owners under the easements that we're quit claiming.
Now, one thing I will mention is that you mentioned Riverway. We have recently acquired from Moda the right-of-way of Riverway. So we actually have right-of-way now all the way to Johnson Creek.
Oh, that's good.
So that's no longer an easement. And that's one reason why that one could be vacated, is it's an easement over a right-of-way, and that's now been dedicated to us. So you can see it on their Exhibit B, Diagram 1. They have actually shown the new right-of-way with the sewer lines that are in it. So that's...
So we were just talking about the possibility or the thought of, as we establish new easements, wherever we establish them, instead of just saying it's a sewer easement or it's a stormwater easement, just say it's a utility easement for the city of Milwaukie. That way,
preserve the flexibility.
Whatever we need to put through there, we can put through there. Anyway, anybody else have any other questions?
Yeah, I don't.
So if you would like to read the resolution.
Actually, before we go into the resolution, I just want to make sure, since the resolution calls that I will continue negotiations, and then I will sign it once we are completed on those negotiations. We're going to make the request you stated. I just want to confirm that I still have your support in signing the document if it's not granted as a full utility easement. amendments?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll ask.
So the revised resolution reads, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Milwaukie, Oregon, terminating unused sewer easements on Moda Plaza property at 10505 Southeast 17th on certain terms and conditions and accepting a new easement. Whereas tax lot 3500 in the southeast quarter of section 26 and the northeast quarter of section 35, Township 1 South, Range 1 East, property contains a building that was constructed above an existing sanitary sewer line, and the owner Moda requests that the sewer line and sewer easement be removed from below the existing building. And whereas certain additional sewer easements exist over abandoned sewer lines and certain existing sewer easements do not encompass existing sewer lines, and whereas the City of Milwaukie and Moda desire to terminate the easements that exist over abandoned sewer lines or that do not encompass existing sewer lines, and whereas a new sewer line has been constructed outside of the existing building footprint and a new sewer line was required to lie within newly granted 20-foot wide public utility easement, and whereas Moda will grant a new sewer easement to the city intended to encompass all active City of Milwaukie sewer lines on the property for which no easement currently exists, and whereas taken together, the termination of unused easements and grant of new easements does not constitute a transfer by the city of any interest in real property valued in excess of $25,000. And further, the unused or abandoned easements are surplus and the public interest is served by terminating such easements, establishing existing easements in areas in which sewer lines are located, and taking such other actions as are necessary to remove unnecessary encumbrances and clarify the location of public improvements. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Milwaukie, Oregon, that the city manager or their designee is hereby authorized to execute such documents as are necessary to: 1, execute a deed in favor of Moda, quitclaiming all city right, title, and interest in the easements that are no longer needed, are located in error, or unused generally as described in the Alta survey dated May 5th, 2018. And 2, accept a transfer to the city of a new easement generally in the location shown in Exhibit 1 hereto, subject to final confirmation of the location and legal description by the city engineer.
Did you need a motion? Yeah. More discussion?
Well, we can ask for discussion after the motion.
Okay. I move to approve the resolution terminating unused sewer easements on Moda Plaza property at 10505 Southeast 17th Avenue on certain terms and conditions and accepting a new easement with the amendments noted by staff. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to move to approve. It's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution terminating unused sewer easements on Moda Plaza property at 10505 Southeast 17th Avenue on certain terms and conditions and accepting a new easement with the amendments noted by staff. Is there any further conversation? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. It passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. It's participation. Everybody else's.
Okay. This is the part of the agenda during which council will hear citizen statements regarding city business. Those wishing to speak must fill out the yellow speaker registration card available on the table in the hall and identifying agenda item number 4, audience participation. As council has other business items on the agenda this evening, speakers will be limited to 3 minutes each. Because the information provided during the public comment may be new to some councilors, the city manager will respond on the next council meeting to those comments that require follow-up. Before we begin, are there any follow-up reports from the September 4th, 2018 audience participation? Ms. Ober.
There are no follow-up.
All right, with that, I have Hamid.
Howdy, Mr. Mayor, City Council, other awesome city folk. I'm here to talk about the Milwaukie Station Food Cart Pod.
State your name and city of residence for the record, please.
All right. My name's Hamid Shibata Bennett, Secretary of Milwaukie Arts Committee, also city photographer. So we've had this wonderful food cart pod happening for this past year now, and it's been a really great place to congregate and create all kinds of social activities. In August, we had our second annual Maximum Music Happy Hour, and it was a big success. The following day, we also had the food cart pod celebrated its 1-year anniversary with another party. We rented a stage this year, and it had the cost of about $1,000 for those 2 days. And I just wanted to express it'd be really great to keep developing this food cart pod as a place for social interaction and for folks coming together and enjoying themselves. A permanent stage structure might cost about $4,000 or so, and that's like 4 stage rentals. So fairly easily that cost could be covered, and we could have a lot more events. Talking with the various vendors there, they've said that they'd love to have like music type events happening like a couple times a month during some of these really nicer months, and some like a permanent structure would be really great to have. So. And it'd be just kind of big wish list. It'd be great to further develop the food cart pod with some more permanent shade and wind structures, maybe even some actual real toilets there, real restrooms. Just pie in the sky kind of thinking, but I feel like the more we develop these kinds of things and just make it a place for people to come, go, and enjoy themselves, the happier we are as a society. So that's all I got. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Those are great suggestions. I second all of those.
Yeah.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, Hamid.
Cool. All right. Anybody else? All right, then we are to our other business. Consideration of a residential zoning change at Llewellyn Street and 44th Avenue, file number ZA-2018-003, and ordinance. The council will now consider adoption of an ordinance for a residential zoning change from R3 to R2.5 at Llewellyn Street and 44th Avenue, ZA-2018-003. We are here tonight to enact by ordinance a zone change decision made by the Milwaukie Planning Commission on August 14th, 2018. The council is not holding a public hearing on this matter. The required hearing was held by the Planning Commission. Does any member of council wish to announce any actual or potential conflicts of interest?
No.
No.
Nor do I. Does any member of the audience have any objections to the council's jurisdiction to consider this matter? Seeing none. Does any member of the audience have an objection to any member of the council participating in this decision? Also seeing none, the staff will now describe the zone change and the action taken by the Planning Commission. And this will be presented by our Associate Planner, Brett Kelber. I always do that, every single.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councilors. I'm Brett Kelver, Associate Planner with the city. I was thinking, Mr. Mayor, if you continue to call me by the wrong name, maybe I'll think of one to call you by.
Good idea. Or you could change your name.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Not a problem, just as I always say, don't call me late for dinner. So just real briefly, the action before you tonight is more or less a formality. Often when we're dealing with zone changes, especially if they involve larger swatches of property or changes to the comprehensive plan map, they go through a legislative type 5 process, and you would be the final decision maker. So you would actually have had a little bit more involvement in by hearing, and an ordinance, an adopting ordinance would be a little more logical seeming. In this case, the number of properties and the size of the properties with the zone change involved was small enough to go through the type 3 process. And essentially, I guess in part, what we expect to follow from this is for at least a couple of the properties that are involved in the zone change to probably redevelop sometime in the near future with a couple of duplexes. There'll be a kind of a little property reconfiguration, then some duplex development. So I don't know that I have much more to say about it than that, but if you have questions about the process or anything else, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
Well, I did wonder, I mean, you said duplexes, so that made sense to me. That makes sense to me, but the staff report mentioned doing row houses, and as I understand it, you can't do row houses unless you do a planned unit development in Milwaukie until we change that. Is that correct?
I don't know that that's correct, and I'm not recalling exactly that part of the staff report. I think.
Well, it just listed those as a possibility. I mean, it definitely wasn't saying that's what's going to happen, but it was sort of listing what could happen in an R2.5, and that was something that could happen in an R2.5, and that was not my understanding unless somebody went through a planned unit development process.
I thought they were allowed. I'll look.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll ask you to check it out.
It's not, it doesn't affect the vote, I don't think, but it just was interesting to me because I've often thought we should have more row houses in Milwaukie, and it's been I've been told in the past that, there's only one way to do that.
Well, and that's through a
planned unit development, PUD.
I'm pretty sure that part is not accurate. I think in some of the higher density zones, for sure, the R2, R1, that row houses are allowed. And we have some design standards in the zoning code that talk about how those should be done.
And I know I'm pretty sure that you're right about the higher density zones. What I was curious about was, were they allowed in the medium? But this, as it turns out, 2.5 is not considered medium density, or is considered medium? Because I know there's some confusion in our code around that.
Yeah, I believe it is considered medium.
That's what the staff report says, yeah.
So the only question I had, I didn't get a chance to watch the Planning Commission hearing. Was there anybody there opposed to this concept?
No.
Anybody else?
In fact, the neighborhood association was supportive, the two neighborhoods.
Right.
To Hector Campbell and
Llewellyn,
both supported? Okay.
Oh, that's good to know, too.
Yep, that is good to know.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you.
Row houses are allowed in all medium and high.
Okay.
Zones.
Including the R2.5. Yeah.
So the planning director reports from the audience that
Planning
row
director
houses
said
are allowed.
Thank you for capturing that. Yes, they are allowed. Row houses are allowed in the R2.5 zone.
Okay.
Great. Maybe we'll see more then. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I would entertain a motion.
I move for the first and second readings by title only and adoption of the ordinance amending the zoning map to change the zoning for the properties addressed as 4401 to 4409 Southeast Llewellyn Street, 4411 Southeast Llewellyn Street, 10500 Southeast 44th Avenue, and 4401 Southeast Harrison Street from residential R3 to R2.5.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded for the first and second readings by title only and adoption of the ordinance amending the zoning map to change the zoning for the properties addressed as 4401 to 4409 Southeast Llewellyn Street, 4411 Southeast Llewellyn Street, 10500 Southeast 44th Avenue, and 4401 Southeast Harrison Street from residential R3 to residential R2.5. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. It passes unanimously. So, Ms. Ober, would you please read the ordinance twice by title only?
An ordinance of the City of Milwaukie, Oregon, amending the zoning map to change the zoning for the properties addressed as 4401-09 Southeast Llewellyn Street, 4411 Southeast Llewellyn Street, 10500 Southeast 44th Avenue, and 4401 Southeast Harrison Street from residential R3 to R2.5. And again, an ordinance of the City of Milwaukie, Oregon, amending the zoning map to change the zoning for the properties addressed at 4401-09 Southeast Llewellyn Street, 4411 Southeast Llewellyn Street, 10500 Southeast 44th Avenue, and 4401 Southeast Harrison Street from residential R3 to R2.5.
Mr. Stauffer, would you please poll the council?
Councilor Parks?
Yes.
Councilor Abba?
Aye.
Councilor Falconer?
Yes.
Council President Beatty?
Aye.
Mayor Gamba?
Aye.
Motion carried 5-0, ordinance 2165.
All righty. Next up is our parking strategy adoption. This is going really fast.
Yeah.
That shouldn't happen until like 9 o'clock at night or something. Parking strategy adoption resolution. This will be presented by our development manager, Layla Aman. And our consultant, Rick Williams.
Evening.
Got it? Great. Good evening, Mayor, Councilors. Layla Aman, Development Manager for the City of Milwaukie.
Rick Williams with Rick Williams Consulting. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, and we're happy to be here tonight. We're asking you to adopt the downtown parking management strategy. And I want to emphasize that this is a parking management strategy. It's not a plan. What I think the main difference to me in that statement is that we are actually going to be actively looking towards implementation. And that was the focus, the tenor of this project from the beginning. We've been working with the community for the last 9 months, working with you as well to identify both from a data perspective what the universe of our parking situation looks like, what we project the future to be based on our current and projected development patterns, and to come up with some really meaningful solutions about how we start to address those things now so that we set ourselves up for success in the future. We've had a couple of long sessions with you and with our partners out in the community as well. So tonight we're really focusing on the high-level strategies and kind of zooming back out and giving you a framework of what the next 1 to 5 years essentially looks like. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Rick, who gets the run of show, although he only has 6 slides today, so we'll see how much time we'll use. But to give you a sense of the key findings, so what are the big picture things that we heard? And then what those strategies are that we are recommending in terms of moving forward into implementation. And then also offer you some time to ask us of any questions. But ultimately, we hope that you will adopt the resolution adopting the strategy.
Thanks, Layla. And it's nice to be back. Again, my name is Rick Williams with Rick Williams Consulting. I think this is our 3rd meeting with you. So hopefully you have the report, you've seen it, and feel that it reflects all the work and the input that we've received from you and we've received from members of the community, and best practices that we think are the right strategies for Milwaukie. You've already seen all of the data reports. I think we've given them to you twice. They're also summarized in a briefer format in the final report itself. But just to take you quickly back to some of the key data findings, is generally parking is underutilized both on and off streets. We know we have pockets of constraints. So simply because we show low to moderate use, it doesn't mean we don't have problems. And the core zone reflected that, as you'll remember. Its occupancy is 68%. In the peak hour. We do know that we have low turnover. We want it to be higher to support ground level businesses. We want that number to be closer to 5. It's now 3.74, and a lot of that's because we have employees parking on the street, and we've talked a lot about that. Between 5 and 8% of the on-street system is actually being used by employees. And that's just the ones we know about, and because we have permits on street. Off-street, again, like the on-street system, low to moderate use with peak occupancy rates less than 50%, which leaves over 1,000 empty stalls empty in the peak hour. And we talked a little bit about what it means to be empty versus available.
And so we know that most of the off-street parking is privately owned, and so as you'll see going forward, one of the key strategies is how much of that can we capture? What's reasonable? We know we can't get it all, but can we use that asset that's already there? But it'll require partnerships because of it's privately owned, and the city can be a facilitator in that. The plan calls for 28 recommendations in 8 element areas of management. The strategies are provided in both near, mid, and long-term formats. Sometimes one strategy will have an immediate action item, a near-term action plan, a mid-term action plan, and a long-term action plan, because some strategies evolve. Some strategies are one time. All strategies can occur concurrently, but we tried to list them in an iterative order that made sense. I think we talked about at the last meeting, what's the first steps we should take? What's the second step we should take? And that was the intent of the plan. It's going to require more coordination and oversight than is currently given to parking in the downtown. And so one of the key strategies is to focus a little bit more staff time on parking management and working in a routine basis with a stakeholder advisory committee to give input and a review and a freshness of ideas, because the stakeholder advisory committee, the people really out there in the front lines. Again, these are the 28 strategies, not all of them, but the key ones. And it kind of shows you the iterative strategy flow of things we would want to do. The plan gives a narrative of each strategy. It says why the strategy is being recommended. Again, it formats near, mid, and long-term action plans for each strategy, and where we had costs available, we provided them, at least in a sort of an estimated fashion to get people's minds thinking about resource impacts. As we talked early, we realized that this was a good time for Milwaukie to be doing this because of the fact that your economy is improving so much here in Milwaukie, and the fact that you're losing some of your off-street supply. And so the first thing we wanted to do, and it was, we need to first thing when we get adoption of the plan is to come back to council and talk about clarifying what is the city's role in off-street parking. We need to get an answer to that, because many of the strategies will be correlated back to, are we in, are we out, are we an owner, are we a non-owner? In other words, we're an owner versus a partner. All of that is probably intuitive to you, but we need to get that going. And also, there's some certain code revisions and just cleaning up and housekeeping that needs to be done to just get everything a good foundation to start on. Forming the Stakeholder Advisory Committee and taking a real hard look at improving and adding to your enforcement in the downtown. It's a key asset for the downtown, and adding hours to enforcement, we believe, will begin to create improvements in your existing supply, as well as support future supply as it comes online. Routine data collection. If you can get all that done in 18 months, that's really pretty good. A clear policy statement, improved on-street enforcement, or enhanced on-street enforcement. You have good enforcement. Enhanced on-street enforcement, and a stakeholder advisory committee working on with you to implement all the elements of this plan. It's really important, as we said, that before we start making significant changes on-street, that we do everything we can do to capture the off-street system, so we give a place for our employees to go. We just don't go out and change the on-street system tomorrow and not have a plan for where those displaced employees would end up. That's why we lead with the off-street system, is how can, what's the possibilities for that shared use program and getting employees off-street and giving them incentives to be off-street by varying the rates. Premium spaces are higher priced, more remote spaces are lower priced. So to create a strategy of incentives. Then we can get into the on-street system. We make several recommendations in terms of what to do with 15-minute stalls, with no-limit stalls, with 4-hour stalls, and with 2-hour stalls, and also what to do with your loading zones to better demarcate them. Highest violation rates are in your loading zones, so we want to do a better job of that. And we got great information from enforcement staff for that. Now we have an on-street and an off-street system that have a foundation, they're working together. Then we begin to increase awareness of how to use the system, initiate a customer first program, not only with the advisory committee, but with local businesses to work with us to get their employees to the right stall so that their customers have the premier stalls. So again, as you can see, it's all timed. We also want to improve alternative modes. With the light rail system here, just because it's the seventh element area doesn't mean that the element area goes in that order. We have a light rail system. We haven't maximized it. There's near-term strategies in the plan to improve alternative modes and create incentives for city employees as the city taking the lead to encourage that type of transition from parking to alternative modes, which then serves as a model for the private sector to emulate. And so just because I really want to emphasize that enhanced alternatives are really a form of capacity that we haven't utilized. Just like those unused parking stalls, we've got a lot of capacity with our light rail system and our bus system that we should use, and the bike system, the network that we're creating. Then finally, there are near-term strategies to begin to examine now, once we know what the policy framework is for the city in terms of what their role in parking is. Then we can begin to implement a strategy near-term that would find potential sites for future parking capacity, look at funding options that might be available to both the city and the private sector to make new capacity happen, and then create and then be in a position to add capacity when it becomes necessary and feasible. Following all of that, as you can see from basically the end of year 2 to 3, is once we begin making improvements to the on-street system, we need to be very, very sensitive to what's happening in the residential, abutting residential areas. So enhancing and clarifying your existing residential parking program is a recommendation. You already have a framework of a residential parking program permit plan, but we've made recommendations on how to clarify that so that if issues and conflicts are being created in the neighborhoods, the city's ready to respond if a neighborhood association comes and says, we'd really like to take a look at an area permit program. But that would be at their request. You would simply have a very clear framework for them to make that request. So with that, I think I turn it back to Layla.
Yeah. Do you have any other questions? Basically, the next step would be to request you to approve this resolution adopting the strategy.
So I had a couple of questions. First off, we do have a neighborhood parking program. I mean, we do have a mechanism for them to ask if they want it, and I've been pleasantly surprised that they haven't asked since light rail opened. I mean, I think when we were enacting it, I was really anticipating that we would need it, and frankly, I think probably, you know, I haven't done my own survey or anything, but I think probably less of the concern is about light rail passengers and more is about boats. Boat parking, blocking up the streets on the weekends. A
lot about boats.
Yeah, boat trailers, or not the boats themselves, but the trailers. I did found there were a couple things in the document itself I wanted to ask you about. So page RS 75. You say all off-street parking, all at the bottom, all off-street parking is privately owned. That's not really true, right? The city owns some of it.
You're right, but we anticipated that development will occur, and then it will.
No, we'll still own across the street. So it's not true. Even if when Main and Monroe is developed, we still own the parking lot where the Electric Avenue is going to go, right?
Yeah. Right.
So
we'll make that happen.
Okay. Okay.
And we own this one.
And oh yeah, and behind the city hall. Yeah, and at the library, which I guess that won't be a lot. It'll be on street parking.
I think when we clarify that, we may even not only say the number of lots the city will then own, but the percentage of what that is to the entire supply. So thank you for that.
Sure. And then RS 85, and this relates to something you said in your presentation. So it says there are 277 stalls of no limit. I just wanted to, well, first I just wanted to understand this chart a little better on RS 85. Inventory on street and off street, and so it has the 15-minute, 30-minute, and then the no limit, and it says there's 277 no limit stalls. I assume that's all on street.
Yes.
And so that's almost half, not quite, but it's definitely
in the study area. Yeah.
Okay. So no limit, though, is, there's still permit parking required, right? Or they're not even permit required?
You don't have to have a permit.
There's no signage.
There's no regulation of those stalls.
Really?
Correct.
And where is that?
Right
That way.
Yeah.
All that?
Just outside
okay.
of 21st, once you get past
21st.
Waldorf, really,
Okay.
there's no signage out there.
Okay. Okay.
So we want to begin to capture some of those that are closer in for two things. One, the ones closer in, let's compare, the plan asked to compare the, because we didn't do this, compare the relationship of the stall to the ground floor use.
Mm-hmm.
If the stall is in front of a ground floor use, we would want it to be a 2-hour parking stall.
Mm-hmm.
To take better control of places to give employees an area to park, we would, rather than no limit, we would make the remaining of the stalls a time limit and the option to park with a permit. Then there are no limit stalls, we're in control, but we're still giving employees an opportunity to park long-term.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We even put a new definition of commercial street in to better define that relationship. If a no-limit stall is in front of a non-visitor type of a generator, it would become 2 hours or by permit. If it's in front of a restaurant or a coffee shop or something like that, then we'd want it to be 2 hours with no permit.
I don't know what you heard from your talks with the DMBA and the businesses, but I will tell you that, I think 2 hours is generally a good measure myself, but I have had a business owner, in particular a hairdresser, tell me that's not long enough, that they need some 3-hour or 4-hour spaces. So, okay, I think that was it for my questions.
I didn't have a question so much as just to say that I appreciate first of all, the outreach you did with the business community is very important. But second, that we now, we're looking at data and we're looking at maps and
Right.
you've done the research. And so it's not anecdotal anymore. It's not, well, there's not enough parking, there's too much stall, whatever. We now have data. And I think that's real important as we move forward in our policy making, that we actually have numbers to look at. So thank you for that. And I'll echo what Councilor Beatty said. The complaint I hear about parking the most is the trailers. The boat trailers, which I know was not really a part of the study, but at some point we're going to have to address that too.
Yep. Yeah. Same thing. Pretty
Questions?
No.
Yep.
So I had a couple of things. So in the interest of causing housing to be less expensive, there's a concept around decoupling parking, the cost, the charge for parking from an apartment, so that you can choose to have parking or not choose to have parking. If we were to start doing that, or I don't even know if we can require it, but if we were encouraging it, how would that change the concepts around sharing it somehow? Because I think if I'm paying $100 a month for a parking space, that's my parking space, right? And maybe I would choose to rent it out to some employee that works in town. But how would that change that dynamic, I guess, is what I'm...
In a number of ways. The first would be the dynamic within the buildings, particularly if the building built some parking. There could be, it's called unbundling. So the rent does not reflect the parking charge. So a number of residents could choose, one, not to have a car. Because they don't have one, so therefore that parking charge is not buried in their rent, which could create an underutilization of the residential supply because what they anticipated is now not being used. And we also know that there's still a reverse commute that happens with the residents that are there during the day. That's why we made some language changes about changing the accessory designation of facilities. So one, it does kind of open up the market. If I'm charging $100, but the shared use lot across the street is charging $50, I might choose to either not have a car or park somewhere else. It starts to create a market. If it creates underutilization of supply in the residential building, the residential owner, because it's no longer accessory parking, is incented to compete for daytime business and for any undersupply that he didn't anticipate. So I hope that made sense, Mayor. The longer term answer is, or the bottom line answer is, it creates a lot more flexibility in the system if parking is unbundled. And studies have shown the rents will go down because in many bundled situations, whether you have a car or not, you're paying for parking. So you will see then the market will start to reflect those fluctuations.
Right. That's good to know. I was afraid it was going to be the opposite answer. So that means strategy number 5 is something we need to get happening sooner rather than later.
Code changes?
Yeah, around access to the parking from not through the main entryway, right? My particular favorite strategy was number 21. That was the bike parking, additional bike parking in downtown.
Yes.
And that should happen forthwith. I mean, next week.
We said none of this is linear. It run concurrent.
Yeah, there are, I think there's 3 levels of bike strategies, near, mid, and long term. So, yeah. Like the integrated
He wants
strategies.
them all right now.
Yeah, right.
If we could do them all, we would certainly support you in that.
But I agree with Councilor Abma that it's really great to have the data. It's great to have a strategy going forward. I think it causes comfort on both ends, right? Both from the city standpoint and from the businesses. And I look forward to working through the process of beginning to make some of this happen. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great data.
Oh, we need to.
I did have a follow-up question. I got to thinking about what you said about the, you didn't include Main and Monroe, or Main and Harrison in your calculation of, of what the city owned, or what was private versus public. Did you include it in your other calculations, or did you take it out entirely?
No, only in that statement that needs to be corrected. In terms of the data, we actually have utilization data on each individual specific lot.
Right,
so we can pull that out. So no, it wasn't dropped. It was as you well found, it was just a misstatement on our part.
Okay.
Well, I would clarify, though, that when we did the future projected forecast, we did pull it out of the supply because we are anticipating redevelopment, but we're also anticipating some replacement parking specific to the building.
Right.
So we did account for those kinds of details for the future projected, but Rick is right.
Correct.
We
On
left
the
it
occupancy side, it's there, but on future projections, it was taken out because it was assumed to be gone. But we did net out what was lost versus what potentially could be put back in.
Right. So it might be good to drop a footnote that kind of explains that, and what the percentage is now. Like you said, you wanted to say what percentage privately owned accounted for versus publicly, or publicly owned, and it might be good to put both, what it is now and what it would be without Main and Monroe, Main and Harrison. I don't know why I keep saying Monroe. Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Anybody? Then I would entertain a motion.
I'd make a motion. I'd move to approve the resolution adopting the 2018 Downtown Milwaukie Parking Management Strategy.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the resolution adopting the 2018 Downtown Milwaukie Parking Management Strategy. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. It passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's great work.
The opportunity.
Like Councilor said, it's good to have those numbers.
There's been a request for a break. You want 10 minutes, 5 minutes?
I just need 5.
5-minute break. So we will take a 5-minute recess and be back at 7:20 according to that clock. All right, so next up is Milwaukie Bay Park update, a discussion. This will be led by our city manager, Ann Ober.
I wouldn't say it's led by Ann Ober, just listed.
And everything that happens thereafter is her fault.
Oh, that's true, actually. That part's true. No, but Kelly Brooks is out of town, and so I'm really actually just turning over to NCPRD if you guys want to come up to the podium. Thanks.
Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor and councilors. I'm Heather Cook, as you know, and tonight I'm here to give you an update on the Milwaukie Bay Park project, final design phase. And I'm also joined by Melinda Graham. If you could introduce yourself first.
Yes, I'm Melinda Graham. I am one of the founding partners of 2 Inc. Studio Landscape Architecture. I'm happy to say that I am too old to know what this is, but the name of our firm, 2 Inc., it's the number 2, I-N-K. I have recently learned that that is a phonetic contraction. So similar to Reddit, if you're hip enough to know that Reddit is basically a pronunciation of I read it here. 2 Inc. Studio is a play off of, I know, I just learned this, Wilda. I was hip and didn't know it. So 2 Inc. is a play off of the word ink. It's the verb to ink, because what we do is we take an idea, we take lots of people's ideas, we ink the idea, and we turn it back to the community. So I just wanted to share that because I do still use the term MapQuest, and I've been told that's not hip, and so phonetic contraction, I leave you with that.
All right, well, thank you very much. And Melinda's going to join me in some comments a little bit into this presentation. NCPRD was last here on May 1st, which I learned from Councilor Beatty was the 3-year anniversary of the ribbon cutting. And at that point, we announced, although we didn't have with us 2 Inc. Studio as our selected design consultant. We share a little bit about our project schedule, the project organization, and very preliminary thoughts about funding, and started to share some of the work that was underway. So we're back to tell you a little bit more. Quite a bit more, actually. We had a lot of progress this summer on several fronts, so I want to recap that for you tonight. I want to also, as part of that, recap our sort of first round of public outreach for the project, and then just hit on some key technical updates. So 2 Inc. Studio and their subconsultant team has done a ton of technical work during this summer phase, and so I wanted to just make you aware of some of those key components. And then we'll talk a little bit about funding and next steps. So our summer progress really started in June when we felt like we had finally gotten our consultants on contract. 2 Inc. Studio came on, and we also have JLA as our engagement consultant. So they're part of the team working with 2 Inc. and NCPDR in the city hand in hand. We jumped right in, which is an understatement. I think we were already moving as we jumped in. And that meant that we were jumping right into technical investigation, so sort of the nitty-gritty kind of stuff, but also looking at programming and design principles for the project, and also community engagement, both in terms of planning engagement and then moving very quickly into actual activities for community engagement, many of which you're familiar with because you've been out and about in the community this summer and you've been part of those events. And what we're doing now is we're making this pivot in December from this initial phase, and we're reviewing that information, developing a design direction, and continuing engagement. This kind of alphabet soup along the bottom of the slide is kind of just giving you a rhythm of our basic committee structure. So I'll talk in a minute about the SAC, which is our Steering Advisory Committee. We're having the Steering Advisory Committee meet about 6 times during this phase of work between July and February. We have a technical advisory group, which is more of a point contact group, but we've met with them as well, and a monthly or daily check-in if needed project management group, and that's composed of both city staff and NCPRD staff. So this is establishing sort of our rhythm for guidance all along the way so that we can't drift. So the first thing I wanted to highlight about the summer progress is we got our Steering Advisory Committee recruited, confirmed, and up and running. And so we have a really great, savvy, active group on the Steering Advisory Committee. It includes the entire membership of the Parks and Recreation Board here in Milwaukie. It includes the representative from the Art Mob. We also have 2 at-large members from the district. We have a representative from the District Advisory Board, and we also have the 3-in-1 Counselor Parks, who's meeting multiple purposes and is an important part of our crew. And I wanted to speak a little bit about what this group has been doing, because this is really an important group for us to be touching base with all along the way. Not just bringing stuff to them, but having them bring comments and feedback back to us. They're also in a position to provide suggestions to the council and the district board. So really important group that we'll be touching base with all along the way. We started with an orientation and getting people engaged in initial conversation in July. Throughout August, I think they wondered what they'd actually signed up for because they were so engaged in volunteering, both at tabling events and at the August 24th event, as well as just helping our team find more contacts in the community for outreach. And then we just met last week, really taking a time to pour over the information we've gotten to date and to talk about how we then take that into our development of design alternatives. So it's been a great group, really pivotal part of our process. So part of our summer activity has been public engagement, and so I wanted to take a moment to summarize this kind of pretty intense August of summer outreach on the project. We had the August 24th celebration, which you guys are familiar with. I'm glad it was a great night and you guys got to come out. We also had a public online survey that was up and running for 4+ weeks. We had a Spanish version online as well that started a little bit later, so it went a little bit later. And we also did local event outreach. So I'm just going to hit some highlights of those events. I'll leave you tonight if you want to take copies with an August outreach summary that you can peruse on your own time. But I'm really just hitting some highlights here. And if you want more information, please feel free to peruse that summary. But we had I would say 300 to 350 people at the event, so it was a big mix of celebration and input, which we were really, really happy with. We had the Historical Society there, we had the city booth, and in the NCPRD booth. We also had kids activities, so it was a very celebratory but also very useful event for both sharing project information and soliciting input. We had approximately 225 people doing these dot exercises where they engaged with the information in the boards and expressed their preferences. So we were thrilled with that, and we also had a lot of people fill out comment cards from that event. From the online survey, we had over 775 respondents. So combining that with the public event, we had over 1,000 people, and we were thrilled to see that kind of number for a response on a single project. We shared information about the project, both in the survey and at the event, and also about the guiding principles, which are the overarching principles that guide this project. Specifically in the survey, it was very parallel to the public event where we asked people really open general questions about how they wanted to feel, how they envisioned relaxing and being in nature, but then some specific questions about some of the project components that we've been talking about that we've carried forward from 2010 master plan. So asking them about the children's play area, the gathering space, art and how we integrate art at the site, and also an interactive water feature. So this is just a sample of what our results look like. So there's more of these kind of exciting charts in the document I'll leave you. But despite some fairly small differences we saw in the numbers from the public event versus the survey, generally we saw some pretty strong trends about preferences. So this just shows the gathering area and how a large number of respondents preferred the amphitheater, which was in the an amphitheater concept was in the 2010 plan, and that's still a very favored approach, also performance space. So we were able to really start teasing out some of these and confirming some of these preferences. Just another example, the children's play area. We didn't really know what we would see, but we saw a very strong preference for the more nature-oriented play, which isn't entirely surprising because we're by the river, we're in a natural environment at this site, and it's also something that people are seeing more of and more familiar with. It's more of a trend in recreation and playgrounds, so not altogether surprising, but good to see the confirmation and the strong notes of interest. Aside from the survey and public event, we also tabled at 10 different events, including farmers markets, neighborhood concerts, and one of the NCPRD movies in the park. And these were pretty informal. Many of you were tabling alongside us for the city booth at these events, but we shared info. We had a lot of really high-quality one-on-one conversations. We listened a lot. And just really had the help of a lot of our SAC volunteers in this as well as staff and the design team. So we were extremely happy with all these events. So then we get to sort of the more nitty-gritty technical investigation, and there's been a lot of different aspects of the site. You guys know a lot of the history of this site, so the work now inherits a lot of that history on the site. And so when we look at historical flooding or utilities, we're looking at things that have been carried forward from the past and looking at how we're going to deal with those today. So we're looking at things like site conditions and context, very specific issues like hydrology and geotechnical issues, infrastructure utilities, the health of the trees, primarily the coast redwood, but then also historical research, which can inform the design and some of the choices about the site. One of the investigations we began before we even brought the consultants on was looking at our permitting issues, because we knew that we had an Army Corps of Engineers permit already in place, and we wanted to navigate that from the get-go. So the great news is we have we've been through a preliminary permitting investigation with our consultant. We have discovered had really confirmation of the parameters that are in that permit, so then when we start this phase of design, we really understand what we have to do to make sure we're not unnecessarily triggering a permit modification. Things like stormwater, impervious surface grading, we know where we have to be mindful of those things, and we know that if there's any concern, we go to the Corps and we talk with them about it. So we've established that conversation. They know about our current efforts, and so that door is open, which is great. One of the other things that we were investigating this phase is exactly what it means to do permit extension, because with the October 31st, 2020 deadline, we wanted to know, what does that mean? What if any one of a number of things happened and we were close but not quite there, finishing? And the excellent thing we've heard back from them so far is that the Corps really works with their permittees on extensions when they're needed, but it's about being in dialogue and working with them. So it's nice we have the relationship established. We can work with the Corps, and really when we get to our 30% design in February, at the end of February, that's really when they want to see more, and we can have an even more detailed conversation about any concerns, how to address them, how to move forward. But we've had a good time establishing contact with them. We've also had a chance to meet with the Milwaukie Planning Department to understand the permitting requirements of the city and what they need to see when, so we've got timelines set for that as well. Just trying to stay on top of it before we're on top of it. The other thing is, maybe to state the obvious, but this is a slide that you've seen numerous times. We're continuously looking at these project elements that have been carried forward from the 2010 master plan, and these were articulated in our scope of work and in our RFP, and so we're continuously looking back at this and saying, how are these being integrated? How are they being carried forward as we do the update? How do we address these priorities? So they're staying top of mind, and they've been in a lot of our literature and our displays so that they don't get lost. With this, I wanted to have Melinda talk a little bit about this process of putting it all together.
So really quickly, I just want you to know, as a council and as mayor, please do feel free to ask questions at the end about the park, but then also about the studio and the team. I am one representative of a very large team, civil, electrical, mechanical, architectural, survey, geotechnical, historian. So there's a very large group of people that's been working behind the scenes, gathering the technical information, helping us with the history dig and the public outreach. Just really quickly, the team that we assembled for this project is a team that has done this exact sequence before. And what I mean by that is it is not unusual to do a master plan for a park, for a civic open space. These processes take a really long time, and I think sometimes it's difficult with public processes because the average layperson, right, is like, get it done. Like, we did the work, we took the survey, like, okay, where's the park? So one is just to let you know, this is not uncommon at all, and it's something that that we do a lot of and that we take great pleasure in, which is this idea of inking ideas. So where we start is with a master plan. What has the community already done, already identified? How did they identify it? Who identified it and when? And so this is what Heather's talking about, where this public outreach is really to confirm the work that you'd already previously done, as well as kind of open it up in the here and now for the people that are your current community and test it. Say, okay, are there new ideas out there? And I'm happy to report there was no big move for a skate park or a ball field or anything like that. So it is a really important part of the process, though, so that you're current with the communities that you're serving. I think the other piece that I would just say about our team, our studio in particular, but our entire team, we approach these projects from a perspective of there is a parcel of land, any particular place on the earth, whether it's a square foot or 10 square miles. That land was here long before any of us. It has its own natural systems, its own natural history that has to be understood and respected. And then you take people and you start laying their history over the land. And we're very cognizant that we are a very tiny piece right now in the here and now of that layering. So the team really works hard to help the current community understand both the land history, the people history, who you are now, as well as who you hope to be in the future. And in some way, help you deliver a space to yourself that kind of encapsulates that and sets the groundwork for moving forward. So that's kind of the big idea. Where we are right now with regard to your project is we've gotten this big public input push. That has helped us understand when people say, oh, we want a children's play area. Okay, tell me more. Is that a soccer field? Or is that a swing set? Or is that this idea of exploratory nature play? So the public input is really good just to get people up, alive, give them recognition for the work they've done, but also to help us start honing in on what people really mean when they talk about the program elements. So we take all of that, and we do take it with a little bit of grain of salt, right? Because not everybody shows up and gives feedback, but it gives us a direction. And there's the technical information. We talked a little bit with our stakeholder advisor committee. Technical information is a glass half full situation at all times. You're always going to get, so for instance, the slopes on this site, really a bugger in terms of accessibility, drainage, if somebody does want a big program footprint, how do you get a flat space in there? But they're also a real opportunity. They set up views for an amphitheater, views of the river with program down below. They set up things as simple as the ability to do a really kick-ass slide on the site. So all the technical information is really looking for both the challenges so that we can troubleshoot it, but then also the opportunities that it opens up. So we take all of that, and we did tell this stakeholder committee this as well. First, we just step back and we just like shake it out and breathe a little bit. Like, nobody panic. Many times, you know, we've turned to Heather and we're like, wow, yeah, it would have been good to know in the interview about the fact that like your flood zone comes all the way up to almost 99E. And so your buildable site is really kind of this like little wedge here. But we take all of that, we step back, and now we do get what's the fun part for us, which is The design alternatives, we are not trying to get the scheme, that's nowhere in our brain. What we're trying to do is develop a set of unique alternatives that tests different things for the public, relationships and adjacencies. So, for instance, you want the playground near the restroom, but you want the restroom near the amphitheater, but you want the amphitheater near the water or away from the road. So we start bubble diagramming the site, we start building these different relationships, and we try and illustrate different relationships in different schemes. Sometimes people don't know what they hate until they see it, and they don't know what they like until they see it. So we do try and do unique alternatives. We also look at issues of scale. If you've developed a priority list, you only have X acres of site, you do have a bit of a water issue. What fits on the site? Is it one gigantic amphitheater and then you don't have room for anything else? What's the relative scale, and how can that scale be flexible? How can you have a spot that feels good to gather as a small group, but also has the flexibility to accommodate a bigger event? So we design these alternatives with really the primary ideas of relationship, scale. We also, as designers, start to weave in what we sometimes call narrative, legibility. This is what designers talk about at cocktail parties where everybody shakes their head. They're like, what? It's about what makes this place special. When you come to this site in the city of Milwaukie, it is not the park that we just completed in Park Rose, right? It has its own personality. You arrive and you understand where you go, how it's laid out. This is a big important piece. These are little sub pieces. That's kind of legibility, character, and we start testing a few of those things as well. So I think that's my big spiel of trying to help folks understand the alternatives. They really are just a big test. We will develop a bunch of them. We actually already have, I think, kind of 8 cooking. We will distill those down. We actually have what's actually called a Come to Jesus meeting on our calendar for Friday, which is where we look at all these different ideas and we try and get serious about getting you to plus or minus 3. That seems to be a manageable public consumption of alternatives. We'll show them to the stakeholder group, get feedback, refine. We'll get some rough costing on them so that we know we're in the ballpark of what we can deliver, and then we'll share them with the public. And what the public will tell us is deal breaker, love it, hate it, could take either of them, and we will make a hybrid scheme. I have never in my 25 years as a landscape architect seen a community say, oh yeah, we're going to go with C. It's not human nature. If you guys do it, this tonight has been very unanimous, and that's awesome. So if you do it, great. But it's not what we're anticipating. So we'll take all of that public feedback on the alternatives and create a final refined scheme for schematic design. I think the last thing I would say is your community, both locally and district-wide, is so ready. It's almost a little daunting for us. We've had to shut down our stakeholder advisory committee because they start brainstorming all these different people they could outreach, and we have to kind of keep them moving. And then we went to the event, and people brought their lawn chairs and just set it up during the sunset. There was food and music, and at some point we got to look at each other. We're like, yeah, I think we're good. We're done. Bill them and run. So yeah, you guys have obviously been working on it for a long time, but whatever we can do to help move this forward and deliver this, folks are definitely waiting. So I would go with the forthwith. I don't know if they'd mock you on that every meeting or not.
It's actually an older joke than that.
Oh yeah.
It's talking about legalese in our documents, and I was like, I use terms like that all the time, Shane. What are you talking about? So I try and use stuff like that whenever possible.
Sure. I use some whereases.
Yeah. I think forthwith should go on a T-shirt with the city logo about the park.
Great idea.
I love that.
Therefore,
I third it.
Moving Milwaukie forthwith.
Well done. So that's all the good ideas I have.
I feel like she should just drop the mic. All right, I get to do some more, maybe slightly less fun stuff, but really important. Really important. So timeline for project completion. I try to update this every time. we come here. But we're doing design engagement as planned through February. We're continuing to work on a funding strategy. I'll have a note about that in a moment. Construction documents in 2019, which lead and actually overlap with permits a bit and going into approvals, with the idea that we're bidding this project and getting into construction in 2020. There were a number of different scenarios when we first started about how to phase the project and how quickly we could go and how slowly we could go. We knew we'd somehow be near this, wet weather hold for work before March. So we're feeling really good that we're kind of coming up against that, but not too far behind. And I think the schedule, it's been pretty ambitious, but it's been feeling good, and TUINC's been really great about staying, at pace.
It's like trying to keep up with you guys.
Yeah. So, so we're happy about this timeline, and we'll keep working on it. For funding, the number in the RFP was an estimated $3.8 million. As Melinda mentioned, when we do the design alternatives, there'll be some kind of ballpark costing done, but I mean, it's external costing. They don't even do it internally. It's like professional costing. So that'll be excellent to have at design alternatives. And then when we pivot from design alternatives into final design this winter, that's when we'll also have revised costing. And every time you advance the design, the costing will get that much more specific, a little bit more accurate. So we're excited to have that built into the schedule so that we're not waiting on numbers, and keeping it real, so we understand where trade-offs are in terms of the project cost later. For the funding strategy, our project management group talks about this every time we meet. Funding's always top of mind. As we've been saying, the NC, PRD, SDC funds are anticipated for this project. The city has budgeted funds for this project, which is tremendous. I think it's a big kudos to you for having that foresight to, fund this project with some big pieces of funding. We're working with the city on an intergovernmental agreement, really just starting it to talk about how that funding is designated and what the city wants that funding to go toward. We also have competitive grants. They will need to be a big part of this project as well. So everything we're thinking about, how does this make us competitive, whether it's our outreach or our design or our process, the kinds of project it is, how does that meet grant needs? So we're already thinking of that. Part of the reason we're queuing up the final design for February is so we do have something fairly advanced to present to competitive funding entities, whether it's the Oregon Parks and Recreation District or other sources that we're still researching. And then there's potentially other sources, potentially some private donations. So this is all sort of part of a strategy we're trying to weave together now, and I always welcome ideas for that as well, and questions. For next steps, as we've talked about tonight, really right now it's about doing design alternatives. We're doing some fall outreach to get people out to a November 15th public event. That's just going to be starting fairly soon. We're also trying to do as much as possible, trying to reach out to some more groups. We did a really good job doing kind of a broad call out to the community in the summer, and we're wanting to see if we're missing any groups and who might still need to be brought into this process. December, February, that's really when we start doing the final design. And then all along the way, we're continuing to work on the funding strategy. So that's it for updates, but I would welcome any questions or comments. We have Melinda here and myself, Catherine Krieger's here tonight, so please feel free.
But I like that your phone number's on the last slide. No, it's very exciting. It's very exciting to see it moving, and it was nice to see all the turnout for the August 24th event.
And the submissions on the survey online.
Yeah, that's an amazing number. We thought that the number for the
neighborhood hubs was high, but that's almost twice as many, so that's amazing.
We do a lot of interviews where the committee will tell us, like, this is a really engaged community. And every community typically is engaged in open space and park planning, but this is a really engaged community.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Well, thank you for going through the process just tonight and reminding folks, where we've been and how, that this isn't that unusual. I know that there is so much excitement and so much anticipation, and people really, really, really want this to happen. I just really appreciate the engagement, online with the survey. I was sort of following the comments, and I really appreciated that the park, staff was really doing a very good job of pointing people to the event and the survey and also just responding to those questions about why isn't this happening already. So thanks again for reiterating that and bringing your authentic self while doing it. So.
Yeah, I always joke about the fact of one of the reasons I had to start my own firm is because I'm relatively unemployable elsewhere. I do come from a small town from Chehalis, Washington, and this is my filtered self. So.
Very exciting.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys very much. We do consider it a privilege to come into a community because it is not our own, and that's always difficult both for us and for, I think, the communities in general, because it's somebody else coming in and tinkering with your stories and pulling out information again, and so we really appreciate the privilege of kind of getting to meet everybody and all the mythical people. We've now met Gary and Wilda and Hume. So thank you. It is a real privilege for us.
Yeah, well, thank you. We're all very excited. Cool.
It's fun.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.
So speaking of mythical people, we have Gary Klein that would like to comment on.
Make a comment.
I segued.
He's not mythical.
No, he's semi-mythical.
Legendary, but not mythical.
Yeah, legendary, not mythical, right?
Thank you.
It's not me.
Now going to be Heather.
Gary Klein, 10795 Southeast Riverway Lane, Milwaukie, Oregon. I'm here to comment on the Milwaukie Bay Park, and part of it has to do that, I've been working on this project for well over 15 years in both the Milwaukie Riverfront Board, Milwaukie Task Force, and now the Parks and Rec Board, and also on the Steering Advisory Committee. Thank you for all those appointments. The one thing I wanted to remind Council has to do with parking that was just talking before this, and the way the park is designed at this time, and how Phase 2 has limited parking with approximately 20 spots for vehicle with trailers and 13 for just vehicles. And the park before that, prior to 2015 when it opened, and let's see, we started changing things in 14, so it was before that, it had over 30 spots for vehicles with trailers and plus other cars. And then in the gravel lot north of the boat launch, there was another spot you could put at least 15 more cars. And at that time in 2010 and before, you could park on McLaughlin Boulevard. So when we had big events like spring fishing or 4th of July, et cetera, all those places were filled. And so it was real busy with just activities at the boat launch and in the park and so on. And now we've restricted down everything, but there's a key in here that we may have forgotten what we were going to do with the parking issue. And that's when Milwaukie bought, the cash bought Coho Point, and Max was maybe going to end here, so it was thought that that might be a spot for parking for Max, and at the same time a backup for the park. And so I'm just reminding you that we're looking at doing something with that, and reminding you now that we have no parking on McLaughlin. And if you're going to do something there, we're going to really restrict the volume of vehicles that can come there with boats, because I have yet to see anybody walk up with a big boat or ride a bike up with a big boat or get a bus or Max to get their boat here. So it's a really big issue, and we've really restricted the use in that area. Plus, if we want to be a regional park, parking will be a big point. So just letting you know, if we do something with Coho Point, is it going to help with the parking situation for the park or not? And that's the question and the neutral thing I just wanted to mention. And have any questions, holler.
Thanks, Gary.
Do you remember when we started buying the properties as a city?
For 2010, I don't remember when it was right off the bat, but it was happening when it was still a riverfront board and Max wasn't finally settled as to where it's going to end. We did a big push and it got pushed to Park Avenue, and then it kind of dissolved that we weren't going to do a parking lot with TriMet at that point. And it's kind of been nebulous. There's been a lot of things. We've even had, I remember, there was a sternwheeler that wanted to be here, and that's where they wanted to be, and they would have had a parking lot. And so a lot of things have happened like that. And even this most recently, the PT boat wanted to come and land here just for excursion cruising, and actually they are still looking for a permanent place other than where they are too. So I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen, but parking is certainly part of the issue.
Okay. Any other questions?
Well, I guess I do have a question. Are you suggesting that we don't move forward with Coho? I mean, what's your solution?
Well, what are we going to do for parking is the question to you. And because it's not in what we're doing in phase 3, we're just expanding the internal of the park and bringing more reason for people to be here. But all of a sudden, the parking issue is forgotten.
Well, Gary, didn't you, I mean, we have Coho and we haven't been using it for parking. And maybe that was a mistake, I don't know, but until the construction people were there, we weren't using it. It was sitting empty. Nobody's been pushing to use it for parking for the last 3 years since phase 2 opened. And I guess you were on the board for many years, and you remember when they did the big survey, the big cards they sent everybody, and it was sort of the decision point about boat ramp or no boat ramp, right? There were people who wanted a boat ramp and there were people who didn't want a boat ramp. And it was always my understanding that the shrunk down parking was a compromise that the Riverfront Board made.
Yeah, we wanted to be a park, not a parking lot.
Right.
And so we pushed, as you said, expanded the park, made it more people-friendly, not a concrete strip area that was going to be a large boat ramp. Yes, we didn't want that, but yet on the backside of it, again, the reason we kind of scaled it down, and that was probably part of it, was because we acquired Coho Point. And it was going to be part of the max parking along with support the park.
Well, I definitely remember those discussions, but I mean, that obviously changed, you know.
Yeah, it did.
In 2010 or whatever.
All of a sudden, we're going to lose Coho Point for possible parking. So if we don't have that, then we've got to kind of remember what we're doing in the park and what we're going to have for parking. And we do things like the winter solstice gets a lot of people. People park all over the city. That's a non-boat event, so that's not so bad. But when we get the 4th of July or spring Chinook fishing, then it's a lot of boats, and they can't park on McLaughlin. We're not opening up the lot over there. You know, that was a thought that was going to maybe happen, and it's certainly scaled down some of the boat activities, but yet we have a much better dock and a better boat ramp than what we ever had. We never had a dock before, and now the boat ramp's safe. People used to drop off the end with their trailers. I've hauled people out of there with my Jeep pulling them up because they couldn't get out.
Yeah, I remember it was closed for a while.
Oh, yeah, that was, we've had problems with it off and on in the old one. Not so on the new, thank goodness.
Well, I vote we put the parking back on McLaughlin. I think we just call up ODOT and say we're down.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll happen like that.
Oh, yeah, we'd be
Well, one thing, we do have Kronberg Park, so I don't know what you want to do there, but I'm just throwing it out. Maybe there should be some discussion. I don't know what the tell you.
There are boats parking in Kronberg Park now.
Well,
It's been a problem.
Yeah.
Yes, but we're
And-
enforcing on those.
Are we?
Oh, yes.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Did you say?
Yeah, and
We're
I even
taking
talked
enforcement.
to the police if they were going to ticket people for 4th of July this
See
year.
vans
Because what had
parking there all
happened
the
is, of
time.
course, we were working on the bridge, and they were taking up parking, so it was just a mess for a while.
Well, yeah, hopefully, it will be better when the bridge construction
Yeah, well,
is
we've
done. We
lost a
have some
couple of
more.
spots with the new bridge.
We lost 6 right now, or 7, or.
Yeah, it's, so what I said in numbers, it's going down from there.
All right.
Okay, go ahead. No,
Good.
nothing more for Gary.
All right, thanks, Gary.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
But I don't know, is NCPRD staying around for the spring bars? Okay. Because I wanted to get an update somewhere in here on Wichita as well before we, okay, great.
All right. So the next thing we have on the agenda is Spring Park Nature Area Update, a discussion also to be led by City Manager.
This one I'm slightly more prepared for. So on August 7th, we came before council and had a discussion about how council wanted us to mark the boundary of Milwaukie Bay Park. And there were several options that we put forward at that time. I'm sorry, Spring Park, wrong agenda item. And we had discussed boulders, we had talked about costs, we had talked about how we were going to be moving rock and all of those pieces. And out of that, we went back to the drawing board just to see if there was a way to make it more feasible and to make it an easier process for all parties involved. And so NCPRD has agreed to cover the cost if we will install basically signposts, hardy signposts at the various points along the boundary where it jogs at each intersection. We've also come to an agreement that if one of the longer stretches needs an additional post, that we would install a post at that point just to make sure it's very clear for sight lines. We checked on the greenway. Basically, as long as we don't create a fence, we're fine. And as long as we treat those posts as signposts, we're fine within the greenway, and we don't have an arduous process to go through the planning process. I've also had a conversation with the engineering department. They feel pretty safe that as long as we're not putting in those cross beams, we should be fine. And so really it's a question to you of would those posts work for marking that boundary? And then the secondary, well, there's really 2 additional questions. One is there has been ongoing conversations with the state around where that line is and what the process is on the water side in order to mark that. We feel very comfortable marking that at the high water mark and outside of the high, above the high water mark. Any further down at this time, we will take additional research. We are not forgoing our rights within those zones. We want to make sure it's really clear that the city's not giving up rights should we have them in those areas. But just to make sure that the process is moving forward, we would recommend then that you start marking that now. If that works for you, then we will come out, NCPRD will start mowing that line over the course of probably the spring is when we would start mowing that line.
And the installation of the signs would be?
NCPRD has agreed to do that and to cover those costs, so we would start that immediately.
Oh, immediately, okay.
And each of those posts would have a sign, so all along the whole way.
So in order for me to stay correctly within the planning laws, I will need to treat each of them as a signpost. So we will actually sign on one side that you're leaving public property and on the other side that you're entering public property.
When are we looking at doing it?
We would be doing it over the course of the next month. We'd like to sit down with the landowner and make sure that we're having a discussion with them on our neighbor. And then we would start that process. Once the posts were installed, we would give him and his spouse some time to actually remove any of the installations that they have on our side of the boundary before we started any enforcement.
Would the posts just be in the mowed area, or would they go behind the house?
So that is the second question. So right now we had a lot of clarity about where the fence line is, where they have the existing wrought iron fence, and that side of the house you wanted to have demarcated. The question is, do you want to go into the front yard? What is considered that space, that side of the house, away from the water?
I was thinking actually more of what I consider behind there at the north, along
Yes.
their fence.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
So we were thinking to the north that we would be putting in posts.
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's what
You
I
mean
was
to
asking.
the east?
No,
The whole line is north of it's the north property line for them. So are you talking about?
Specifically north of the house.
South part of the park.
Yeah, north of the house.
Correct.
That behind, what I consider behind, where his fence is.
So there's northeast and there's northwest, right? So there's north directly, which is where he has his existing fence. Then you have the northeast, which would be what is considered partially his front yard. And the northwest would be what we would consider the portion closest to the water. And there's been some, I'd love direction on that as to whether or not you want to demarcate the entire line.
Wouldn't we want to mark all of our park property and designate that now you're in public property, now you're in private property, not just part of it?
Some of the issues was that it was right-of-way. There were different ways that those lands were construed at different points in the property. So there was a county right-of-way easement on the northeast side of the property. And so it was just a little less clear to us because we don't actually, it's not an encroachment. Our encroachment, that is the county's encroachment. But there's a portion that is the park as well. So we were planning on going to the edge of the park, but not going any further into the county right-of-way encroachment area.
But doesn't that make the signage confusing at that? I mean, do we need two different signs then? Because it wouldn't be accurate to say you're leaving public property.
Sure, because the right-of-way is public.
No, what we're saying is we're at that sign, if you post on our park line and not the county line, you're leaving public property, which is not accurate. So that gives the indication that you're entering private property.
Right, and you wouldn't be, it would be
exactly
public, but it's a different public.
For another 30 feet or whatever. How wide is that easement?
Probably 30 feet since it's a road easement.
Said that somewhere, something said that,
Yeah.
I think it makes sense to demark the public boundary so that it's clear that this is public. Now, I don't know what we need to do with the board in order to achieve that, the county board.
Well, if so, the way the process would work, if we were to go to the board and say, we'd like you to abandon that right-of-way, they would split the right-of-way. The park, whoever, would get half, and the Arnells would get half. That's how right-of-way abandonments
I just mean
work.
posting signs.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about
like
abandoning any right-of-way.
Right.
Just have them post signs that are similar to our signs. Is that what you're thinking? That's what I'm thinking.
So we've been looking for a way to do this quickly.
Yeah.
So negotiations with the county will slow us down in terms of trying to get a right-of-way somehow deeded or not. I am planning on clearly marking our property. If I need to change what the sign says on the sign, then that is what my intention is. If you guys want me to go to the county and start negotiating for their right-of-way or placing signs on their right-of-way or marking what their right-of-way is, I get a little cautious.
And I don't think that we would want to wait. That's something that we can continue to discuss, but I'm not I don't want to wait for those discussions to finalize before we move on these signs right now. And maybe we say you're leaving city property as opposed to public property, if that creates...
Leaving park property.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Park property would be very easy. Okay.
And I guess I personally would prefer that the signage go along his fence where there's bamboo now or whatever. I don't know if that's his backyard fence or
whatever
we're all saying things different because I don't know if it's the way his house is. But I think we should put as many signs as we can along our property. That's my preference.
Yeah, ones that can't be easily taken out of the ground.
Well, especially if we're talking about the next step is once these signs are up, then you're asking them to remove their encroachments. A lot of their encroachments are on that one area along the fence.
Yeah.
In fact, their fence, I think, might even...
Well, I mean, by encroachments, you mean the plants? I mean, Milo characterized the trees as encroachments, but I mean, trees we can remove when we want to remove them. The fence itself strikes me as the encroachment, and I don't know exactly. I mean, it's encroaching on the northeast at some point, but is it
Not the entire line.
Not the entire, some of the line is the proper fence, and why do we need to add signs to a fence that's pretty solid fence?
Fences.
It depends.
They have a lifetime, and they.
It depends on where. I just want to make sure that it's clear where our property line is. So if his fence is on our property line, that's fine. But to the degree that it's not, I would like it to be demarcated. And I don't know if we can easily. There's no way to easily bring up the map of his property that we have.
I turned off the computer. I didn't.
It's not going to be easy.
I mean, if that northeast, it seems to me the most important thing is the northwest.
Yes.
The beach.
The beach, the waterfront. And to get that demarcated first, if the northeast requires more study or more negotiation, so be it.
We will clearly, I like the idea of the park property. I think that makes it a really clear sign for me, and it also is within my authority. So we'll make sure that we get those up across the property. And then we will also have a discussion with the county just to see what their intentions are around the right-of-way. We're having those conversations actually on a number of roads right now, and whether or not they would be a part of a transfer package. So we can also include that portion in that discussion.
I mean, they do still have houses down that street that are not in the city. There's still at least 2 or maybe more, that they're servicing with utilities, so. Yeah.
And we're looking at, would you say steel post?
Yeah, we're looking at a steel post, and we're still working on a little bit on the designs, but part of it is we need them to be solid. The ones close to the water, though, we need to be able to remove them if they are catching debris during high water, just for safety. So we are still working on some designs, but there will be concrete in the ground with sleeves. This will be very easy to spot.
That's good.
Okay. So that's your concept for during flooding, is to remove the signposts?
If we have a problem, we may not. But there are a few that are very close to the water, as we've seen that there are places where the water comes up pretty high. So NCPRD will have discretion to remove them by simply picking them up and then relocking them in place when the water recedes to make sure that everybody remains safe. But for most of the property, the posts can be permanent.
Do we have people that are speaking?
Yes, we have a bunch of people that are speaking. All right, so is that it for report? Let's start with Gary. Come on back up, Gary.
Okay, great. Gary Klein, 10795 Southeast Riverway Lane, Milwaukie, Oregon. Just for information, I retired in 2016 after 45 plus years working in the banking industry, working with First National, First Interstate, then Wells Fargo. I was a senior underwriter about half my life, last part, and for over 15 years I worked with special projects dealing with partial releases, easements, well water rights, lot line adjustments, anything to do like that. We had over 1 million accounts. I dealt with the whole U.S. and worked with 2 other underwriters in the same area. But the thing that I find most interesting is how this encroachment issue with the city, where you can't encroach and take property as a private citizen, is taking so long in time. Everything I did, I've never seen anything take as long as it has to deal with this on the Spring Park area, and I sure hope it can get wrapped up quickly. It's nice you try and negotiate and work with them, but everything that I dealt with on encroachments like that was pretty quick. Just thought I'd mention that.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Charles.
Thank you. Thank you, Charles Bird, 12312 Southeast River Road. I've been here 30 years, and I've known about this encroachment for most of those years. I want to, first of all, thank everyone in here who's listened to this project and who's promised me they would do something about it, and especially promised to do that, and others on the council I've talked to, so thank you so much for doing that. You can echo Gary's concern about the time it took, but that's behind us now. Do it. mark the entire line, even if it's fenced, because you're not only marking it for everyone, you're marking it for the landowner who seems to not understand his property line from past behavior. So just mark it, make it really clear. Good markings or good fences make good neighbors, and this has not been a good one. I wanted to divert just 1 second about make a comment about from a point of view from someone who takes bond measures and how they're written and what's said in them very seriously, and we vote for that, and it's a very serious communication between the public and our elected officials. And in the case of the library, I know that you've received a legal ruling to say you can go ahead with the plan that you've got forward. Why don't you just step back and think, yes, we can legally do this, but we had something very serious that a promise made to the people who are paying the bond to do a certain thing, and that's not being done. So is it truly the right thing to do? I'd like you just to reconsider that and think about that. That's from my heart. I see that, and that's important for us to keep communicating in this really open way through these processes. I'm suggesting again that these posts be done. If you have some concern about the right-of-way, whether it's the county or the city along the road, the entrance road, I mean, that's something that can be continued to be dealt with. And I know the city has gone to bat with that property before in that area up there along the county's right-of-way. So I don't know whether the city has any issue or any sway in that, but I would say mark the entire line, mark it with posts, and do it as soon as possible. Sooner the better. And you have my support.
Thank you. I have a quick question.
Certainly.
Do you believe it is the right thing to do to spend $3 million more of the city's funds to renovate rather than rebuild?
I think that the amount of money that was promised from the ratepayers should be respected.
That's not changing. The amount of money is not changing. So my question was very straightforward. It's a yes or no question.
In the scope that was written in that bond measure, I understand that there's going to be some sale of property that was promised to be part of the new library's concept. Am I mistaken about that?
It was a simple question.
Okay.
I still haven't gotten an answer. Do you think it's the right thing to do to spend $3 million more of the city's money to renovate rather than rebuild that library? It's going to cost $3 million extra to renovate it. You understand that, right?
I think that should be for this council to consider where we started and where we got the original data and what's wrong with that. And if we need $3 million more, then there's the public out there to ask.
Okay, thanks. Carol. Yeah, well, I was saving you for last. I have Carol Fuller. Sorry.
Carolyn and Carol.
Hi, I'm Carol Fuller, and I live at 11919 Southeast 19th Avenue in Milwaukie. And Mayor and council members, as previous chair for Friends of Elk Rock Island and Spring Park, I just urge you to follow the recommendations that have been given the council regarding the Spring Park nature area. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
Dave.
Dave.
David.
Nope.
No.
I wrote a nice little cute speech, but you guys kind of done most of my work for me, so I'm going to do it anyway. Thank you.
Cool.
Since I don't get a chance to do this very often. Dave Tyler, 11919 Southeast 19th Avenue in Milwaukie. Okay, Mayor Gamba and council members, thanks for letting me speak today. My name is Dave Tyler, and my family has lived in Milwaukie since I was in 4th grade. I spent my childhood playing on Elk Rock Island and the waterways surrounding it. So back in those days, we had to cut through people's property and go around fences or go by boat or swim over to the island. There was no public access to it. We now, thanks to the forethought of previous mayors and council members, have a beautiful park in Spring Park that lets all of us legally go down and enjoy this beautiful riverfront and island. We need to protect this park for future generations of children because it is a very special place, as I now know in my older age. We, the public, should be able to use and enjoy our entire park. That's why I am today suggesting you put in metal posts 4 to 6 feet tall, set in concrete, with park boundary signs on them, spread 20 to 30 feet apart on our southern boundary, and that way we all could know where we can play and go and explore with our family, friends, and children. I thank you very much for your consideration.
That's a brilliant idea, David.
But I had to finish. I thought it was pretty cute.
Thank you, David.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Where were you 4 years ago when all this started?
I guess. I don't know.
Or even.
Yeah. But I did it all on my own. I just.
Thank you.
Lisa.
My name is Lisa Gunyon-Rinker. I live at 3012 Southeast Balfour Street. And I wanted to thank the councilors and mayor for having this discussion tonight. And I wanted to come up and say I very much support both the city staff and the NCPRD staff's hard work on this project. And I support everything they said. There. That's what I have to say.
Cool. Thank you.
And you forgot to mention that you are the chair of the Park and Recreation.
I am the chair of the Parks and Recreation Board, but we didn't vote on it, but so I'm just a citizen. I'm land use chair in Ardenwell, Johnson Creek Neighborhood Association, but I didn't talk with them either. It's just me. So
thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Representative Tomei.
Mayor Gamba, City Council members, thank you for allowing me to speak today. I think it's already been said. I had written a long speech, but I don't think you need to hear it. It's all been said. I appreciate the work of the staff. Thank you very much. I think what they've recommended is great. I think what you were considering is great, and I support it. So thank you very much, and I'm open to any questions. By the way, it's sort of deja vu all over again tonight in many ways.
I did have a question pertaining to the previous item. Do you remember when we started buying properties along the riverfront?
Years ago.
Yeah.
Years. Many years ago.
Are we talking 4 decades now? How long ago was it?
I'm not sure 4 decades.
Was it before they started tearing down the buildings on the other side?
On the riverfront, yeah. No. Well, there was the car dealership. Yeah. There were the apartment houses, which had been a hotel at one point. There was a tavern. Yeah. All those. And so whenever they came up for sale, we systematically bought them all, and usually very quietly. And the same with the bike path, all of that. We didn't make a big deal of it. We just did it, knowing that this was going to be happening. So it is a long time planning also. Does that answer your question?
Was that during your tenure as mayor?
Oh, and before.
And before. Okay, that's what I was
right. When I was on the Planning Commission, I was on City Council.
So in the late 90s and early 2000s.
Before that.
That's what I was trying to say. 80s,
decades.
right?
80s?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, very long
First
time.
property, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the city's been working on this a really long time. So seeing the end in sight, right, within two years is pretty exciting.
It is very exciting. Absolutely. When I heard a date, oh, yes. Wonderful. Thank you. And I'm open to any other questions, but thank you so much, and thanks to staff and all the work that's been done and your serious consideration of this. I know it's been a tough issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have one last thing. It was just from Yvonne Tyler. Thank you. Vice Chair of Island Station Neighborhood, asking that you support the staff report of Spring Park Nature Area. So
we don't have to take a vote
or
you have our support in.
So posts at all the property corners, all the way out from the ordinary high water mark to the street.
County,
that demarcates the park property line.
And as I stated in the staff report, and I'm stating now, there's still some unclarity. lack of clarity around the water line.
Right.
So we are going to make sure that we are as close as we feel we can be without as much information as we all ideally would like.
Yeah.
But we have been in communication for months now with the state and others, and we just need to move forward. Thanks.
Thanks.
Good. And also thanks to NCPRD for stepping up, and when this is completed, for agreeing to do the maintenance for that area. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Good part.
All right.
So before we go, can Catherine come up and give us a quick update on Wichita and how that's going?
Good evening, Mayor and Council people. Catherine Krieger, Planning and Development Manager for NCPRD. So Wichita is, I like to say, when people ask me when it's going to be done, I'm saying late fall. We're a little bit behind schedule. There's been a few things that have come up, that unforeseen conditions. There's a lot of rock out there. I don't know if there used to be a road or something there, but it's just a lot of rock, and we have to take a lot of that out and bring in some new fill and new soil. And nothing really unusual. You know, it's sort of regular construction stuff. We've been working really closely with your engineers, and your right-of-way group have been really helpful. They were out there yesterday. They've been coming out regularly. So we're not behind schedule a lot, but a little bit, and trying to figure out when we can do a groundbreaking. We might, if it's a little bit too late, we might
ribbon cutting.
We did the ground. Ribbon breaking.
The ground is very broken.
And we didn't hit any of those rocks with our shovels.
Yeah. So if it's a little bit too late, we'll do a really small something and then have a party in the spring. So it's probably where we're headed.
I also, before we let Catherine leave, wanted to thank her. So she's saying that the project's late. It's 3 weeks late. The team has done an exceptional job and has run into more than just rocks. We've run into abandoned wells. We have run into all sorts of random problems on the site. And they have done an incredible amount of work on it. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
It's only 3 weeks late.
My pleasure. Yeah,
well done.
It's fun. And it was a dusty summer, and thank goodness it's raining a little bit now. The neighbors are really thankful, too.
A little happier. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
All righty. I believe we are up to council reports, yes?
We don't have an executive session tonight, do we?
Nope. Not that's been,
Yeah.
that I've been told about. All right. So the draft climate action plan is now available for public review. Just visit the homepage at www.milwaukieoregon.gov to take a look and submit comments by Friday, September 28th. The Arts Committee invites you to create a scarecrow for the annual scarecrow contest at City Hall. Entry forms must be submitted by this Friday, September 21st. Prefabricated stands are also available for pickup at City Hall when you submit your entry form. Completed scarecrows must be dropped off between October 1st and October 5th, also at City Hall. And you can find the entry form on the web at www.milwaukeeoregon.gov or stop by City Hall lobby or in the kiosk in front of City Hall to get a paper copy. Join the North Clackamas Urban Watersheds Council this Saturday, September 22nd to clean up several sites in the Kellogg, Mount Scott, and Boardman watersheds. Volunteers will gather at 8:30 at North Clackamas Park prior to heading out in teams. You can find the link to register on the city's events calendar on the homepage at www.milwaukeeoregon.gov. The library will close on Monday, September 24th for 3 weeks to move to a temporary location to allow construction to begin on the new library. The temporary location will open in mid-October at 9600 Southeast Main Street. The Oregon Drive Less Challenge begins on Monday, October 1st, ending on October 15th. Keep in mind that every trip counts. That includes walking to the store, biking to work, carpooling, or vanpooling, or taking public transit. Log your trips at www.drivelessconnect.com. The more trips you log, the better the chance you have of winning some great prizes, including $500 cash cards, a $1,000 Bike Friday gift card, a $200 Airbnb gift card, and many more great prizes. The Great Willamette Cleanup is coming on Saturday, October 6th from 8:30 a.m. to noon. Volunteers participate by canoe, kayak, stand-up paddleboard, raft, motorboat, jet ski, drift boat, bike, and by foot to free our river of trash and debris. One of the many sites will include Milwaukie Bay Park. You can reserve a seat in a tandem kayak or canoe or bring your own boat to participate. We will aim to launch by 9 a.m. A link to learn more and sign up to participate is available at the city's event calendar on the homepage at www.milwaukieoregon.gov. Register today for the Fun Run 5K Benefit for Resilience Ostomy on Saturday, October 6th from 9 a.m. to noon. The 5K is an out and back route on the trolley trail beginning next to Milwaukie Bay Park. The event includes a health fair prior to and after the event in the parking lot at Harrison Street and Main Street. You can find the link to register on the city's calendar at www.milwaukieoregon.gov. That's all I've got.
So that the North Clackamas Urban Watersheds Council cleanup is it's a cleanup in the morning, and then it's a picnic and party from 12 to 2, and they will be giving away prizes there that various businesses and the farmers market among them have donated. I hate to announce a competing event because I want everyone to come help us clean up. We're going to do Minthorn Springs and North Clackamas Park and Three Creeks. But there is a walking tour of downtown Milwaukee on Saturday as well, led by the Architectural Heritage Foundation out of Portland. You have to pay for it. It's not a free thing, but it's an excellent tour. I went on it last year, and I learned a ton of stuff about the Little Blue Cleaners and the bowling alley and the Catholic Church and sort of a lot of and City Hall, a lot of mid-century buildings in Milwaukee, and it's a really cool tour. So you can find that on the Celebrate Milwaukee Inc. Facebook page or at the Architectural Heritage Foundation's website. Yeah, that was it.
I don't have a report of anything coming up, but I just wanted to touch base back. Alma and I attended the Homeless Solutions Coalition of Clackamas County, the first one that we were invited to last week. And I think that we'll probably be asked to formally pass the resolution that we would like to be among the group that meets pretty regularly. It was a good, broad group. There were people there from the Clackamas Service Center hosted us, and there were folks there to talk about some of the work that they do. We got a tour of the facility, which is amazing. They have a full grocery store in the basement, so I mean, and it's unlimited. Folks can come and take whatever they need. So it's unlike a lot of other places where, you've got a family of 4. Well, you're allowed to have 3 things of this and 3 things of that. Yeah. And they pack up the box. It's, they have a lot of donated food that comes from a lot of the grocery stores, and also fresh produce that's coming from community farms. And so it's a really, really cool facility. But there were folks there from Providence. The lead was there from the county to talk about some of the opportunities for us to make connections. And this coalition really is a place where people gather to get work done collaboratively. So it was really encouraging. And Alma and I presented a lot of the work that we've been doing. The strategy, the affordable housing affordability strategic plan that we just did, and a lot of the other things that we've done, the CET and the vertical housing. And so there were opportunities, I think, to share some of those accomplishments and answer some questions from some of our neighboring cities. There were representatives, obviously from Oregon City, but also there was a woman there from Gladstone. So lots of sharing of ideas, I think, between cities. And so I think we should probably expect to see that soon. Mm-hmm.
Good.
Cool.
And I would suggest, and Alma, we have Valeria, who is working on these issues, and one of the key things is, one of the key things that we'd like to accomplish and we're working on is that web page with links to all the different services. So getting information about, this is going to be a really crucial place for her to gather information and to share it with our neighbors.
That'd be good. And actually, on that note, we will have an email out to all of you, but that website's almost ready. Cool. And Valeria has done an incredible job. I've seen proof of it. So we'll make sure that you get that information as soon as it goes live. So.
Cool. I have a question for the group. I've been thinking, as when we have people here in the audience and they have to wait all night, I'm just trying to think of management issues. I don't know that it would work for us because it's hard to do timing on these, but if the City of Portland does a time certain, and it doesn't mean that they're going to present at that time, it means that they will not present before that time. So that if people know that something's late in the schedule, they know they don't have to be here till 7:15, for example. Mm-hmm. And I know because of the way we move, and it's maybe that's not workable, but
actually tonight Scott estimated our departure time almost exactly, which was perfect. We're getting better at predicting how much time things are taking, and we've been, on your tracker, you'll notice that we have timestamps on them that we've been trying to make sure that we're keeping to, and we seem to be guessing pretty well. So I don't think it's as big of a deal as it maybe would have been 3 months ago or 4 months ago. I think we're getting better at predicting our timing.
Well, that's predicting internally for us.
No, I know, but I think we can make
You think we could potentially do these kind of like a time certain of 7 for this issue, and then they know they don't have to be there until 7?
Well, I think it may be important to note, too, and I'm not sure of the thinking behind it, but a couple of the people who spoke were here very early when we were getting ready to start at 6 o'clock, and I believe they had seen the agenda and knew where things were, and so they left and didn't come back until shortly before. So they were kind of managing it their own selves, seeing, where they were on the agenda and then coming back. But I get what you mean, and I sometimes sit there and kind of worry about people because they've been waiting maybe 2 or 3 hours, to speak for 3 minutes. Yeah.
Tonight we had a couple of inquiries from people. Carolyn called and said, what time do you think this will be? And I referred to the time estimates, and it seemed to be, I told her 7:30 for Spring Park, and I think it was more like 8. But we're trying to get better at it, and we're using that to tell the public. I mean, it's not really a state secret. That's the estimated time.
But we can, if council's interested, I think we can at least test run it, see how it goes. I'm fairly good at knowing how long staff's going to present. Mm-hmm. I am less good at knowing what is going to be of interest to you on all of the matters. So, but we seem to be predicting better. So let's give it a try. We can try it for a couple months, and if we're really off base and it's actually just frustrating people, then we can have a discussion about it.
Well, I was just saying, I think the wording of not earlier than is important, not to make them think it's a time certain.
Yeah, I always found that confusing for the City of Portland when it says time certain. You think, well, I need to be there on that time, and it really just means it won't be before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It does. There are, there are nights when our work sessions get done way earlier. We didn't predict it right, and we get done 45 minutes early. You run the risk of during your regular session forcing the meeting longer because we don't want to start an issue earlier. So that's actually the bigger question is it dictates more our ending time, and that's okay.
I don't think that it's as big of a deal in our work sessions. I think people show up and testify at this council session, the regular session, but less so. I wouldn't necessarily put time certains on the work session.
No, I'm actually just using that as an example. So you could end up with awkward breaks in the middle of your regular session, and I'm fine with that. It gets us better at dictating when we're going to end. We can
and that would happen in Portland too, but rarely, where they've motored through something so much quicker than they thought they were, and they had a time certain, and they just had to take a recess. So it happens on occasion, but I find that this group, we generally don't go as quicker. It's more.
It's the other way around.
Well, and I guess
I'm including myself.
We're chatting.
He said we.
We, as a council, we.
Well, and I guess as long as, the the chair, the mayor always has the flexibility to move order, right? So if we are here and we have a gap and we have something later that we know, we survey the audience or survey our yellow cards and we know nobody's here for, I guess conceivably it could be moved up to fill the gap.
Yeah.
Well, and you do run a little bit of a risk so like even tonight's meeting, we were pulling agenda items, we were changing agenda items literally at the last minute.
Yeah.
So you may end up, I think we try it. I think we give it a go. I think that you're probably going to have less flexibility because you never quite know if somebody's going to care about that one thing that's on regular session.
Yeah.
So you are going to be less likely to move things up. It gets a little confusing on things where we legally have an order we have to agenda, but we know that we're not going to keep somebody till 9 p.m. to have a 15-minute conversation when it's behind a hearing. So it's going to be a little confusing on those items where we'll have to agenda it correctly, even though we're intentionally going to move it up in the script. But Mark and I can talk about that, and we can figure out if there's a way that we can clarify that too on the script.
Can we also just make sure that, on the agenda, we can also just remind people that we have that flexibility, that these are suggested times, and there will be deviation potentially occasionally.
And if you're comfortable with a suggested time, I think that isn't a guarantee we won't talk about this in advance, and that does give us a little more flexibility to move things around as
maybe we do that.
It's appropriate. If we don't think something's really going to have anybody. And
I like suggested time because then if someone is, if they are just really, they really need to come in and
then they should be
voice, then they should be here. They'll make sure that they're here, for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Or get here a little bit earlier.
Okay.
Well, even on the suggested times, we might say, just like they do in a lot of places, it's recommended that you arrive 15 minutes earlier than whatever.
And we can do it on a disclosure at the bottom that's just a new note that says, these are estimates, these are not time certain. Please make sure that you arrive in plenty of time to be able to hear your agenda item.
Can also remind people that email testimony, is testimony also, just in case somebody goes, oh my gosh, I got to go all the way down, it might be something that they could enter into the record via email too.
I have another suggestion too, and when Mark is reading, and I'm just thinking about myself if I were watching TV, I'm a visual learner, I'm not an auditory. Is there any way we could put the dates of the things that Mark is talking about on the screen, and that when it's being filmed, it's not necessarily the audio, you're hearing him, but you're looking at the screen with all the dates.
I like that idea too.
I do too.
I'm sorry, I know that it made sense to you guys, can you say it?
The thing at the end, you're talking about the end,
when
the
Mark-
council report.
Create a slide.
Yeah. Create a slide, and that's what they see on TV.
But it's a really nice close-up shot.
Yeah, never mind. Put it on
It's a close-up shot of me. It's not really nice by definition.
Particularly
They can
when you
listen
have trouble
to
pronouncing
him.
something.
Yes. Yeah.
They can listen to him and see words. That's a great idea.
I'll talk to Jason about having him come up with an ongoing slide.
Yeah.
And actually, that shouldn't be that hard. Most of these items are already in his NDA update. We'll just copy and paste them out.
What is resilience ostomy? Resilience ostomy?
They did.
That's the 5K benefit.
Yeah, they did it last year. I think last year was the first year.
I don't even know what that is.
I heard of that.
Me either.
What, you know what an ostomy is?
Well, yeah,
Sure.
but I don't know why it would be used in this
What's
case.
a resilience ostomy?
It's a fundraiser for a medical charity, just like Alzheimer's or Race for the Cure. That's the name of the medical charity.
Anyway.
Our state representative
raise
was
money for
nice
those.
enough to babysit Lita tonight, so I'm going to move that we adjourn.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor?
Yeah.
Aye. We are adjourned.
Thank you.